We all have that one friend, the one who says exactly what's on their mind, no matter what. And that's Shital Mars.
That's right. Every week, my friends and I dive into whatever's on my mind: sports, politics, pop culture, even my own struggles, you name it. If I'm thinking about it, we're talking about it.
Unfiltered, unapologetic, and just a little dangerous. Get ready for the wild ride that is Shital Weapon. You've been warned.
So this is going to be what I'm going to call a Shital Weapon Quickie. As you know, I'm Lethal Shital. This is Biggie Trog. And this was an impromptu episode because I watched the Super Bowl and I had to talk about it. Not because it's so much the game was so interesting, but that there's enough to unpack there. And we're football fans. I'm a huge Giants fan. We all are in this room. Well, not we all are, because obviously who else is, given how bad they suck this year. but I had some conflicting feelings about the Eagles being in the Super Bowl. I was not exactly thrilled with it, but here we are. And, if you haven't watched the game, and this is a spoiler for you, then I have no sympathy. I don't care. So the Eagles won. And what did you think?
It was terrible. But okay. So on the one hand, hate the Eagles, not happy about that. But it was also not even a game. It was non-competitive from the start.
Well, what I think happened, and so I will say, in the family, we were all talking about who we were kind of rooting for, and I have no beef with the Chiefs. I don't generally like the Eagles, but we all kind of came to the consensus that we wanted the Eagles to win. And the reason we all like Saquon Barkley.
Sure.
And we like Jalen Hurts. And there's enough of a story there. The Chiefs won last time they met up. I do believe that the Chiefs entering the Super Bowl were a subpar Super Bowl team.
Yes.
Given the production over the course of the season, they were really not that good.
They should have lost 8 games.
Like
the amount of luck.
Yeah, there was a lot of luck involved, and I think that luck went dry, and by luck we mean referees. Allegedly. Allegedly.
No. The referees started out trying to help out, but the Chiefs were that bad that they couldn't do any more without exposing themselves, because it was that much of a dumpster fire. There was nothing they could do.
Oh yeah, they were not. They did not show up. The way I kind of think about it is, in the game I was watching it, and the Eagles came out balls out, on fire. Mm-hmm. Like they were here to win this game, period, and they put on a show. And I feel like the Chiefs were watching the same show we all were watching. Like, they were all going, wow, this is pretty good. And now the Eagles' defense is good. They were good during the regular season and the playoffs. They were not 5 sacks good. They were not no blitz front 4 sacks. 7
sacks.
7 sacks good. Against Patrick Mahomes, who's pretty good at getting out of trouble and getting the ball out pretty quick.
That's 7 sacks with the Chiefs having the ball for like 5 minutes through the whole game.
Yeah.
Like, the Chiefs never had the ball because it was 3 and out, just sack, all, pressure, interception, fumble.
Well, and it would make sense if the Eagles adopted like a blitz strategy, but the fact that it was a front 4 that was able to get those sacks, like I feel like the O-line, not that they didn't show up, because it's really rude. It's so easy for me, being that I can't put 2 feet in front of myself and I can't catch a ball, to be very judgy on high caliber athletics.
Sure.
But I will say that was a subpar performance for the Chiefs of the Chiefs, and then subpar performance of that O-line from what they accomplished during the season even, and even compared to other teams. Like, that was a pretty bad performance that O-line put up. Like, they could not protect.
Oh no,
and which means there's no run game, there's no pass game, there's no nothing.
They played like they were mad at Patrick Mahomes. They're like, you know what? This guy, we don't like this guy. We're just going to let him get killed today. That's how they played. Because I have never seen an offensive line that bad. And keep in mind, we are fans of the Giants. And last year they had 80-something sacks for the season. And that O-line was better than the Chiefs last night.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's disappointing because I will say, as much as I didn't care about these teams, I was very much a Lions-Bills Super Bowl.
Yes.
I was all about that. I really wanted the Jim Kelly curse to be over. I wanted the Lions in there. I think they earned that spot. So wasn't thrilled with having to watch a rematch Super Bowl at all. But I wanted a game, and we're seeing this more and more too. And you know, there's a lot of that where I think Kirk Herbstreit said something to the effect of that with the Natty going, "This is what happens when you don't pick the best." And the only thing I'd say to Kirk Herbstreit is that's why you play the games, right? Like, you want to be the best, then you got to win the games, and you got to make it there. And so it's unfortunate.
Well, but that's a stupid statement. Ohio State was the 8th team. They wouldn't have been in the playoffs for college. Pick the best.
Yeah. This is
what
true. Like, you can arbitrarily pick the best. So, you know, it's so easy to do Monday morning quarterbacking and say, oh, well, you know, we could have had a better game. I think that the game that was the better game was the Bills Chiefs getting to the Super Bowl.
Sure.
That was a much better game to watch. It was intense. It was a good game to see. And that was kind of the Super Bowl, but they lost. And so you can't be upset about it. So this was the game we got. And the only thing I will say, the game we got, aside from, you know, the Chiefs just kind of watching the game, is that the Eagles put on a clinic. That there were some really high-flying, great catches, some really great throws, a lot of great defense. I mean, if you were watching film and you wanted to show what a team could do against a bench, like, this is how that would look.
It looked like I was out there for the Chiefs, and that is not a good idea to put me out there.
No, it wasn't a good idea. And I'm happy with how it turned out. It was a bit boring. It
was so boring. Patrick Mahomes, he gets the ball, 2 plays later, he throws a pick. He gets the ball, 3 plays later, 2 sacks, they're punting. Like, the whole thing was boring. Not even like, oh, they got a couple first downs and then there were some no. Instantaneous Eagles ball.
Yeah, they were just plain beat.
But the funny thing is, I feel like the Chiefs only care about beating the Bills.
Yeah.
Because so the last time that Mahomes didn't make the Super Bowl, they had like an epic game with the Bills, and then they just didn't show up against Cincinnati.
Yeah.
And like, there is something to be said that the Chiefs like get all worked up, and then they're like, we're the greatest, and then don't show up again.
But I will say this too, because I've seen this time and time again. When you play hard-fought, hard-won games, like you win in overtime or you lose in overtime, those hard games, your next game is shit.
Right.
Your next game is just awful. And I think that's what happened to the Chiefs. Also, the last time these two met up, the Eagles were on the losing end of that.
Oh yeah, they wanted to destroy the Chiefs.
So they had a little bit more going into this Super Bowl than maybe the Chiefs had. And the Chiefs have already won 2. Like, right, they're not even coming off a bad year. They won 2 in a row. This would be the three-peat one.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of that team have those rings on their fingers already. There's some new guys, but a lot of that team has 2 rings already. So
they didn't need it.
Yeah,
they played like they didn't need it.
Yeah, this Eagles group hasn't won since the Patriots, right? Since they beat the Patriots. Yes. So a lot of this is a new group of players winning their first one, and they were just beat. Like, they just lost. So I think the outcome is actually predictable and was to be expected. But you know what made me happy? I will tell you. Be happy. Listen to Tom Brady. This is like the end of the third quarter where he's down, where it's like 34-0, right? Like it's fairly obvious at this point that the Chiefs are going to lose. And you get to hear Tom Brady still be salty about losing to the Giants.
Oh, so salty.
He would not stop talking about it. He's like, I know how bad this feels. This is so hard. Now, in that game, that was a good game because both the Giants wins against the Patriots were 1 huge games and 2 went up to the wire games.
Which is what we want.
Right. So those I can see how that hurts a little more, especially since both times they were more than expected to win, and win by a lot. I think I just thought it was funny because I'm like, yeah, we beat you. And I will say, and I said this last night, Eagles, Giants, the NFC East in Super Bowls is smash mouth football. Like, they are dynasty killer football. And, the 3 Super Bowl losses that Brady had, 2 to the Giants, 1 to the Eagles.
Yep.
Mahomes going up against an Eagles trying to cement his legacy, which again, the Eagles beat Brady. I think that was his last Patriots Super Bowl when they lost to the Eagles.
For the Patriots, yeah, I think so.
So, or was Seattle after that? I don't know.
No, Seattle was before that, I thought.
Yeah. So, but what was great about that is that the NFC East is just, when you're trying to build a legacy, you're not getting past the NFC East.
You don't want to see them there.
They are going to be part of your story regardless. Like, you're going to go, oh, this is my Super Bowl. Oh, I have to go through the NFC East. All right, pack it in. It's not happening.
Yeah, it's a terrible situation. I mean, you can get the win. It has happened, right? The Chiefs beat the Eagles last time. But it is hard. It is a hard thing to do.
Yeah. And I will say, then we go to the halftime show. Okay. And I'm gonna be the contrarian about the halftime show.
Ooh.
I loved it. I loved the halftime show. I will say, I'm saying I will say a million times. I realize that I'm being very redundant and I'm talking way too much. My show. It's okay. I went and I love Kendrick Lamar. Kendrick Lamar is in my top 5. I'm very well aware of what is going on between him and Drake. K. Dot and Drizzy, that beef is real.
Sure.
But looking online and looking at the complaints, I feel like the complaints stem from 2 places. I'm going to go maybe 3 places. 1, you're old and grumpy. Like, you're just like, oh, I just popped into a show that's not for me. This is, he's not speaking to me. I'm not the audience for this. And I'm grumpy about it. I don't like it. I wish it were different people. 2, big Drake fan. Sure. You don't like Kendrick Lamar because he's dissing Drake, and you don't like it. But 3 is just not being able to get it And that 3 is the nuance I want to bring here. Is I feel like if you watched it, I'm a big music fan, generally, across genres, across decades. Going from 70s classic rock, 50s standards, 80s hair and metal, 90s grunge, the birth of like new wave hip hop, R&B. I can listen to nearly any genre of music and really appreciate the artistry in it. The reason why I really love that show is Kendrick Lamar is a very poignant artist. Everything he does is very intentional. The words he uses are intentional. The raps he makes are intentional. And they speak to a broader theme than just, talking about tits and ass. Not that there's anything wrong with that. Love a good tits and ass song. But I find him to be a very poignant speaker about what's going on in the world, what's going on in politics, what's going on with culture and hip hop, not just Black culture, but just American culture. And if you watched the show and have appreciation for artistry or poetry and have a discerning eye for reading into the lyrics and the imagery and the production value, you can see how much work went into that, how much thought process went into that, how much creativity went into that, and there was a message that he was trying to convey through that, through everything he put into that performance. And he said it before the show that this is going to be storytelling. And forgetting if you don't like hip hop or you don't like rap or you don't like Kendrick Lamar or you don't get him or don't know him, I would suggest rewatch the show from a critical lens, less from a boppy dance lens. Because if you don't know that Serena Williams was crip walking, and if you don't know all the Drake beef, and you don't know what, K Dot's new album, and you haven't listened to it, take all that out. Pretend it's the first time you're interacting it with storytelling and imagery, and try to pay attention, because I think there was a lot in that performance and a lot in that show to appreciate from a critic's standpoint, from a storytelling standpoint.
Well, I didn't even know that the critics hated it until this morning. I liked it. I thought it was pretty nice. I'm comparing it to all the 70-year-old singers they had the last several Super Bowls. I'm like, oh, this is nice. This isn't just some old guy on a stage singing for an hour. That which is what it felt like anyway. Like, I don't know. I thought it was nice. So then this morning I'm looking and reading news about the Super Bowl, and then people are complaining about the halftime show. I'm like, what? What's going on?
Yeah, it tells you this is how split we are in America. Like, you either loved it or you hated it. And I remember Rihanna's performance. And she was pregnant, and everybody was like, that was low energy or whatever. But what I remember the most about after Rihanna's Super Bowl is that everybody was trying to mimic her dance moves. TikTok was flooded with people trying to recreate the show. Dancers trying to recreate all the movements. I remember the sign language interpreter from Rihanna's show, and she was like fantastic. Like, she put on her own show from Rihanna's show.
She was almost the star of the show.
And Rihanna had probably, for us millennials, have a lot more of the catalog that we know. Kendrick Lamar is fairly new. So I'm like, as I was watching and looking at like the tweets and the articles and stuff, I'm like, and all of them are written by people over the age of 40. I go, ooh, did we just turn into our parents how many people that said that that show was trash ran outside and yelled at some kids to pull up their baggy pants? Like, I don't know.
Well, to be fair, I ran outside to yell at kids to get off my lawn, but I mean that's just because I hate the kids
You see,
being on my lawn.
like,
I mean,
if we think about it, that being grumpy about the show and like, oh, I didn't like it. I wonder, did you reach that age where now you're the parent looking at this music of these young kids and going, what is this? This is like cacophonous to my ears. I need some like, and I think Lil Wayne was up or they were considering Lil Wayne for the show this year as well.
mm-hmm.
And I don't know if he turned it down or if they went.
They went in a different direction. This was one of the articles I read about. One of the complaints was that people who are Lil Wayne fans are upset because Lil Wayne wanted to be able to play in front of his hometown people, and he was denied. And then it's because of some stuff with like Jay-Z being affiliated with like picking the person for the Super Bowl, and there's some beef there, and like all the different beef between different artists.
Yeah.
And look, maybe all of that's legitimate. Maybe Lil Wayne got snubbed. Maybe there's issues. You're Drake fans, and you're upset about that kind of stuff. But take all of that out. Ignore the person who's playing and just listen to the music and watch the performance of the dancers and the artistry. I thought that it was quite nice. I thought that there was a lot of performance and a lot of art to it and a lot of energy to it. That's how I was approaching it.
Yeah, and I think the first part of it was speaking to America. Like, it was very in your face, that message of speaking to America. And if you look at the stage, it's Black artists, Black dancers. The NFL players are predominantly Black players. And to ignore the subtext, the subcurrent in our culture right now, he had a message to America, and that Black people are part of America's history. It's a part to be proud of, what the contributions of Black America to the culture of America, the contribution of hip hop to the culture of America, and what this has done, and everything that has been contributed by people of color in this country. And I think it's a great message there that he was telling. I think also moving on, the subtlety of how he approached the Drake thing, how he approached the like, oh, you can't do this. Like, there's a long history in America of telling artists what they can and cannot do. Mm-hmm. And if you wanted Kendrick Lamar to not sing that song, you should have picked Lil Wayne. Like, and by the way, Lil Wayne, also in my top 5, would have put on a fantastic effing show. And if it is Jay-Z that prevented him from getting on that stage, not that I wouldn't want Kendrick Lamar to have a spot on that stage and be a solo performer all by himself. He doesn't need all these other acts. He doesn't need all these other artists. Like, Kendrick Lamar can stand on that stage by himself. So can Lil Wayne. If it was Jay-Z that prevented Lil Wayne from being on that stage, that's a travesty. Like, get over yourself at this point. Mm-hmm. Like, really, we need to be over it. And I remember they were talking about that with Dr. Dre. They brought Dre in to do that halftime show. Another fantastic, phenomenal show. And there were, Jay-Z has beef with Eminem and has beef with 50 Cent. And basically the reason Dr. Dre has more pull than Jay-Z does, mm-hmm. apparently, because Dre says, I'm not doing it without M's not doing it without 50, and you got to suck it up and deal. Mm-hmm. Like, that there's no show. There's no Dr. Dre show without Snoop, without M, without these people. And so if you want to make that big show that it was, and it was a fantastic performance for them when they did their Super Bowl, dude, get over. Like, at this point, you're like, you got to be like Tom Brady. You got to be team agnostic.
Right. It doesn't really matter. I mean, you can be upset for other people while recognizing that it's not Kendrick Lamar's fault that Lil Wayne didn't get picked. He's just there to put on a show. And
Yeah.
he did a pretty good job doing his type of show. And I understand there are people who are not going to be Kendrick Lamar fans. That's totally fine, right? You don't have to love every style of music, but at least acknowledge that for what his brand is, he performed his brand well.
I think it was a well-crafted. I think the grumpiness is maybe you don't like the music.
Right.
But if you look at the imagery of it, if you look at the production value of it, and if you looked at the progression of that story through 15 minutes, 17 minutes of a performance, probably I don't know what the exact time on it was, but I thought it was well done.
Yeah.
And I'm not mad about the old guy singing either. I love I love Prince, I love the Rolling Stones. I don't mind
I mean, they did good jobs, but I felt like it was just gravitating to an older generation, which had been happening in the commercials and just everything about TV at that point. And it's not, if you want to bring back an older artist because they're relevant, they are still on tour doing cool things. But if you're bringing them back because you're like, I need to make sure the Super Bowl is watched by people who still watch TV, and those people are over the age of 60. Well, I mean, I understand the logistics of that, but for a younger person, I'm like, yeah, but that guy hasn't played music in like 35 years.
Yeah.
What are we doing?
Yeah. I again, and I love that music. There's nothing wrong with that. I think we have to recognize, and I saw it in the commercials too. Like, and this is, you can see this in movies and everything. Like, they're remaking all these shows from the 90s. They're remaking all these movies from the 90s. Lilo and Stitch is back. Like, there's no, and the math on it is that the younger generation doesn't watch TV.
Yes.
They're not necessarily watching football. They're not necessarily watching these commercials. And who's watching TV? The last group, it's millennials and older that still watch TV, that still go to the movies, that have the purchasing power. Gen Z ain't got no money. So,
Right.
So the purchasing power is all in that older millennial and, X and boomer group. And that's what all the commercials were geared to. That's what all of the cinema is geared to. That's what all of the TV is geared to, is that there's people older. I was thinking about this yesterday when I was watching the commercials. I'm like, okay, it actually bothers me that I'm not being introduced to new talent.
Right.
Like, there's, I can only think of 5 actors under the age of 30. Tom Holland, Timothy Chalamet, Zendaya, Sydney Sweeney. Like, who else? Like, who are the young actors?
Not many.
There's Jacob Elordi, Austin Butler. I think Austin Butler's 30 now.
Well, but even if you wanted to stretch it and say, okay, you could think of 15. But 15 is not a lot.
Yeah.
When you think about how many actors you could name over the age of 30, you'd be talking about 150.
And yeah, go ahead.
So there is a huge difference in where the talent is, where they're going, what they want to be a part of, and whether Hollywood's even finding these people to begin with. But my biggest issue as someone who is of that older crowd and getting older, who watches TV or did, I wasn't asking for another Lilo and Stitch. I wasn't asking for
Buffy the Vampire Slayer to come back.
Right. Like, I didn't want that.
That's
put it away. I was happy where it was. Don't ruin my childhood.
And that's what happens, is these remakes are trying to retell the same story. And part of being true to nostalgia is to keep the essence of the original story. That's why we're here. You saw that with Star Wars, and it needs to be a Star Wars movie in that style. That's why we like it. Putting the remix on it is not is not artistry. Like, I would like for new stories to be told. Now, I will say the commercials did make me giggle. I thought they were better than they've been in years past. I thought they were funnier.
They were better. There were some really weird ones, but they were much better.
But there always is a weird
Yeah.
group. I didn't need the Snoop Dogg, Tom Brady yelling at each other for God knows. I understand that you're trying to say, oh, we've got too much hate speech going on in the world, and that's going to be a whole separate show about hate speech, because people think hate has to do with anger. Hate does not have to do with anger. Hate has to do with envy.
That's an interesting.
So
thing.
when you approach it as people yelling at each other, hate is a product of envy, and we're not understanding that it's not people. When people think of hate, they're like, I hold no anger in my heart for this person. No, you're right. You don't hold anger. And then there's that part of you that there's too much in today's world where we get too much pleasure from the misfortune of others. There's too much Schadenfreude. Sure. Too much Schadenfreude. Like, I'm not here excited that Patrick Mahomes is upset. Like, it brings me no joy that there's a losing team who feels pretty shitty today. Like, I feel no joy about that.
Right.
There's a lot of people that feel a lot of joy about that.
I mean, I understand wanting a dynasty to end, being happy that the dynasty ends, but like on an individual level, like on a personal level, being happy that they're upset today, that they're a little bit sad, maybe a little bit depressed, maybe a little bit embarrassed. That's weird. Like,
there's a little too much of it.
Yeah, I think. I don't think that's appropriate. Like, again, these are people, and like these people, it's not like they are inherently just Chiefs. It's the name of a team. They hop around teams every year. Free agency, right? Like, oh, that's the Chiefs guys. Are they? How many were there 5 years ago? Not many.
Yeah.
They're people.
I agree. So some of that was a little cringy, and I will agree with that assessment today that those commercials were a little cringy. Oh, you know what was cringy? Okay, at the beginning of the show was them walking through New Orleans. And the only thought that ran through my mind was, one, why is Tom Brady's shirt tucked like that? Like, ooh, which stylist fucked that choice? But they picked up the most, and I understand there was Sean Payton there. I was wondering, it's New Orleans, where's Drew Brees? But like, they're, Jimmy Johnson and like, it was Michael Strahan. They're walking through the streets of New Orleans. Mm-hmm. And I go, wow. Okay, first of all, football's a hard game. These guys can't walk no more.
Oh, yeah.
This was mean to film them walking. And then they're like so old that I'm looking in their eyes and looking at across the set of faces going, do they know where they are? Does Terry Bradshaw know where he is? Mm-hmm. Like, the walking forward, like, you picked the oldest people to represent the NFL who can't walk and look like they're so confused, and that shot lasted at least 3 minutes.
You really should not do that kind of
in
thing.
Slow motion. And I don't know if it was slow motion or they just couldn't walk fast enough. Like, there was a pace about it.
Oh, it was not slow motion. They are slow motion.
They are slow motion. And I'm watching this going, ooh, this was a choice.
It was a
choice. To highlight the value of New Orleans to football, they decided to take the announcers. And I get it. These are the announcers. And they're the ones doing the commentary. And we're going to have them walk. Like, you couldn't get them a jazzy scooter. You made these people walk all the way through these streets. Like, I was like, this is uncomfortable.
Yeah, and speaking of the announcers, they needed better variety. The amount of me just hearing Tom Brady just talk about his own Super Bowls, I was like, you are not the only person who have played in a Super Bowl. Go away. Nobody wants to hear you telling, or like, I remember when the Chiefs fell down 24-0. and the announcers were like, let's find out if Patrick Mahomes has a little Tom Brady in him.
Oh my
I'm
god.
like, are you kidding me? Shut up. First of all, the Falcons, they choked real hard.
Yeah.
Like, that wasn't, Tom Brady's the greatest. I mean, he did good. He came back fine, but it was handed to him. Like, you have to play the stupidest second half for the Falcons to lose that game. You could have the Falcons of that year play that game another 1,000 times, they'd never lose it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's been the consensus, and I heard that too. It's like, oh well, okay, Tom Brady is not that good of an announcer, and he has to get better. He needs to practice.
Mm-hmm.
Like he needs to get better at taking himself out of the game and not referring everything to a moment he personally, like, every once in a while is good. It's not that I'm mad at that, because Peyton Manning does that.
Well, sure.
Strahan does it.
You've had experiences, yes.
Right. But you need to talk about the game and the mechanics of what is going on the field using the players that are currently on the field. I think that would do better. So he needs to practice. People were like, oh, this is his first year. He's called, what, 5 games maybe? Not that many games. And yeah, he started with playoffs, right? So he hasn't called that many games. And he already got the Super Bowl to call the Super Bowl. And they're like, why? Well, one, when you pay a man that much money, you don't put him on the bench. That's just not how you do that.
I mean, obviously.
They paid a lot of money for Tom Brady, and Tom Brady is going to call the Super Bowl. That's period, end of story, because there's a lot of money in that guy. But I think you're right. There are better people to call that game. Of course, who broadcasts the game gets to control some of that. I think it was Fox, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they get to pick their people, and that's all well and good. I'm not mad at Tom Brady, but he needs to practice.
Well, but what I'm trying to say is, okay, if you want to have Tom Brady, you know what would be really interesting? Have Peyton Manning on there with him, right? Because they had a rivalry. They went at it a lot, right? Like, have somebody who's not just going to worship the ground that Tom Brady walked on. You know, so like when somebody says, let's find out if Patrick Mahomes has a little Tom Brady in him, Peyton Manning could have been like, let's find out if he's got a little Peyton Manning in him.
Yeah.
Because Peyton Manning came back from a huge deficit against the Patriots before he got his first Super Bowl.
Yeah, I will.
Like, anybody's done the whole comeback thing.
I will say, though, there was a commercial where, and I don't remember which one it was, where Tom Brady, they keep asking, you all right, Tom Brady? And he goes, I don't know why people keep asking me that after the roast. I thought that was good. I thought it was good. That shows a little bit of sense of humor. And then the last thing I'll say is Taylor Swift being in the audience. There's too much hate on this woman. She doesn't control where the camera pans. There's a reason she's there. There's the reason the NFL wants her there. They want more women viewers. They want younger viewers. The Chiefs were losing, so they didn't show her that much. But
they couldn't.
They couldn't. She was just reasonably upset. But I also think that she gets an unwarranted amount of hate. Yes. When Taylor Swift shows up, she is the biggest thing in entertainment today. Mm-hmm. She's going to get attention. Stop being upset about it. She's not taking away attention from the players on the field. I remember when Tony Romo was dating Jessica Simpson, they kept panning to her in the Cowboys box.
Mm-hmm.
And they were mad at her. And then when he would lose, they would blame it on her.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Like, oh, now Travis Kelce is going to get blamed for being a shitty football player because he's dating Taylor Swift. None of that has anything to do with anything. Like, I'm not the biggest Swiftie. I don't come and defend all of that, but some of the hate going her way is a little cringy. Like, it's a little weird to be this upset over something that she just does not control.
She has no influence whatsoever. And if they're talking about Kelce might retire this offseason, right? He may not play again. She'll be gone. She's going to go away. She ain't showing up to those games without him.
I would let it go. I'll leave it with this. Like, don't hate the player, hate the game. You know, like,
and I did hate the game a lot.
And I know I said this was going to be a quickie, but look, it takes takes 40 minutes for me to finish.
Hold on.
That's not that kind of show.
This was quick compared to the last one and the ones before. Usually this is a 2-hour podcast or an hour and a half at least. 40 minutes.
Look, I did it. Okay. So I'm glad I watched the Super Bowl. I thought it was worth watching, even though it wasn't worth watching. It was a terrible game. It sucked. But, stick around for the concerts and stuff. Like let's all not be grumpy. Put your old man attitude, put it away, and let's have some fun now. This is a good way to end this, because there's no easy way to end it. So thanks for listening. Oh, you know what I realized? We had on our show my good friend Sean. He's that one listener. So I was thinking about it the other day. He was on the show.
Oh no!
So our one listener was on the show. So now we have no listeners.
We had no. Oh.
Yeah, we have no listeners.
That's the trick.
Yeah,
we just got to get our listeners
on the show. That's what we have to do.
All
right. So let's see. If you were listening to this and you want to be on the show, hit us up. Thanks for listening, guys. Thanks for hanging out with us today. If you love this episode, or if you at least didn't hate it, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss what's coming next. And hey, share it with your friends, share it with your family. Until next time, stay bold, stay real. Peace out.